He almost got traded twice. And the second offer might have been even crazier than the first. Before we get into this, smash that subscribe button if you want the fastest Raiders updates anywhere on YouTube. Here's the situation. Max Crosby is not on the trade block. Let's kill that rumor right away. He's said multiple times he's all in on Las Vegas, and from everything we are hearing, the team feels the same way. But that hasn't stopped people around the league from asking a dangerous question. What happens if the Raiders struggle in 2026? One NFL analyst from Bleacher Report floated a scenario where, if Las Vegas falls out of contention, general manager John Spytek might be forced to at least consider an offer for Crosby. And look, from a pure business angle, it's not a crazy thought. Crosby turns 29 in August. He's still rushing the passer like a Pro Bowler. He's still one of the most feared edge defenders in the league. If a contender truly believes he's their missing piece, they'll pay big for him. So who would come calling? According to this prediction, it's the New England Patriots. Why? Because New England could be searching for pass rush help later in the year, especially after losing Keon Chasson in free agency, and with Harold Landry dealing with concerns following off-season knee surgery. The package being talked about, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and an additional player heading to Las Vegas. Now here's where it gets interesting. Stick around, because what almost happened with Baltimore changes this entire conversation. Raider Nation already knows this isn't the first time Crosby's name came up in trade talks. Earlier this offseason, the Raiders reportedly had a deal in place with the Baltimore Ravens before it collapsed. And if Las Vegas was once getting offered 2 first-round picks for their best player, why would they now settle for less? That's the real question. Spytek isn't going to move Crosby for a discount unless an elite player is attached to the deal. Here's the bigger picture, though. The Raiders aren't tearing this thing down anymore. They're building around their young core while still trying to win now. And Crosby isn't just a player. He's the identity of this defense. He's the emotional engine of this team. Trading him isn't something this front office wants to do unless the season completely falls apart. So ask yourself, how much this team improves this year might decide Crosby's entire future in Vegas. If the Raiders look competitive, if the young players take a step forward, keeping Crosby for a real playoff push next year makes total sense. But if this season goes south, these trade rumors are only going to get louder. One more thing worth mentioning. None of this moves forward until Crosby is fully cleared physically. Nobody in that front office wants a repeat of the Baltimore situation. The encouraging part. Crosby himself says is close. He's described feeling so good that he almost forgets he's coming off an injury, and that the hardest part right now is holding himself back instead of pushing too hard too early. Now let's shift to a story that could shape the future of this offense, and it centers around the quarterback this franchise is building everything around. ESPN analyst Aaron Schatz made a bold case recently. He says signing veteran receiver Stefon Diggs is a no-brainer for the Raiders. And honestly, when you look at the roster, it's hard to argue with him. Diggs spent last season with New England coming off ACL surgery, and a lot of people had written him off. At 31 years old, doubts were everywhere. Instead, he answered with over 1,000 receiving yards, 85 catches, and 4 touchdowns, becoming Drake May's most trusted weapon. Despite that, the Patriots moved on from him after just 1 year of a 3-year, $63.5 million deal. New England has since built its receiver room around Romeo and Brown, and head coach Mike Vrabel has made it pretty clear a reunion isn't happening. So Diggs is sitting there in free agency, and Schatz believes the Raiders should pick up the phone. His logic is simple. Diggs helped turn Josh Allen into an MVP-level quarterback in Buffalo. He helped develop Drake May in New England. Now imagine what he could do for Fernando Mendoza, the #1 overall pick in the 2026 draft and the reigning Heisman winner. Here's a quick question for the comments. Who's more important to Mendoza's development right now, a #1 receiver like Diggs, or more help on the offensive line? Drop your answer below. Look at everything the Raiders did this offseason. They added Nick Bonito-level talent on defense, bringing in NIC Dean and Quincy Walker. They got an elite center. They traded for cornerback Tariq Johnson. They signed receiver Jalen Naylor. They brought in veteran quarterback Kirk Cousins purely to mentor Mendoza. Then through the draft, they kept stacking the roster. And that's before mentioning what was already here. Ashton Jeanty remains one of the most electric young running backs in football. Brock Bowers already looks like a future Hall of Fame tight end. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. This team still doesn't have a true #1 wide receiver. Trey Tucker led all Raiders receivers last year with under 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jalen Naylor has mostly been a complimentary piece in his career. And as great as Brock Bowers is, you can't ask a tight end to single-handedly carry an entire passing offense. That's exactly why Diggs makes sense. Even at this stage of his career, he's still one of the smartest route runners in the league. He creates separation. He moves the chains. He takes pressure off a young quarterback in a way few veterans can. Now picture this. A defense trying to cover Brock Bowers, Ashton Jeanty, Trey Tucker, and Stefon Diggs all at once. That offense suddenly looks a lot scarier. But that's not the only receiver move worth talking about. The Raiders also added wide receiver Brandon Johnson shortly after his release from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not a headline-grabbing move, but it could matter more than people think. Johnson already has a relationship with Raiders receivers coach Zach Azzanni, giving him an early connection with the coaching staff. Before Pittsburgh, Johnson played 20 games with the Denver Broncos across 2022 and 2023, putting up 25 catches, over 300 yards, and 5 touchdowns. His stint with the Steelers was mostly spent on the practice squad, finishing with just 1 catch the entire time. Nobody's calling Brandon Johnson a future star. But every camp battle matters. Every roster spot matters. Sometimes the names nobody's talking about in June end up being key contributors by December. So step back and look at the full picture here. This franchise is trying to do 2 things at once: protect the future and compete right now. They're developing Mendoza into a franchise quarterback. They're surrounding him with enough weapons to succeed immediately. They're building a defense that can hold its own every Sunday. And they're deciding which veteran pieces stay part of the long-term plan. That's why the Crosby situation matters. That's why the Diggs conversation matters. And that's why even a depth signing like Brandon Johnson is worth watching, because every move right now is shaping what this roster becomes over the next few years. There's real reason for optimism here. Young talent everywhere. A front office making aggressive, smart moves. But this season is going to answer the biggest questions. Can Mendoza handle the pressure of being the number 1 pick? Can this roster take the leap? Can the Raiders finally become real contenders again? We are about to find out. Let me know in the comments. Would you trade Crosby for the right offer? Should the Raiders go get Diggs? And what are your real expectations for Mendoza this year? If you're staying locked in for everything happening with this team, subscribe and stay with us. There's a lot more coming, and you don't want to miss it.